Welcome to Speaking of Strong Style, where we discuss the news, issues, and events surrounding New Japan Pro Wrestling. I'm Steven Conway. With me, of course, is Jeremy Finestone, contributors to the Fight Game Media Network. We are going to be discussing the New Japan Cup. We didn't have any shows to watch this past week. It's been a little bit strange. Of course, we covered the latest New Beginning earlier in the week, but New Japan Cup is on the way. We're going to be looking at the bracket. We're going to be talking about some new matches that have been announced, some injury information that we have that's going to have an impact on some of the cards coming up. So,
I see what you did Jeremy, there. Impact.
A lot of stuff happening still, even though we didn't have a whole lot of in-the-ring stuff and this week since New Beginning, and won't until next Wednesday. But still a lot of things to discuss. So with that, your first impressions on this week, the Cup bracket coming out, the lineup, all that, just some initial thoughts before we start breaking things down.
The bracket is fine. It's whatever. We're going to get some matches teased that we're not going to get. We're going to have some layouts here that, probably define the next few months of New Japan booking. It's unexciting. I have a theory about where it could go that is exciting to some people. I'm not sure everyone would love this theory of mine. But I posted on Chris Samsa's Sport of Pro Wrestling tournament. He's got a thing on his website. If you look up the Chris Samsa on X and other social media, you can find it. And you can enter the New Japan Cup and figure out your bracket and do all that. But back to this, it's I was fine with everything. And then we got some injury news today that when we get to it, kind of soured me on a lot of things upcoming. And when we cross that road, I will share why I have consternation, Stephen.
Well, let's go ahead and do that because I would like to get to that because it's a big deal. Hiroshi Tanahashi is out with an ankle injury, and we knew that he had hurt himself a little bit, and they initially announced that he was hurt, and they took him off a show or two, the New Beginning in Sapporo, but then it turns out he's out all the way past April because I believe he was Nick Nemeth. That was going to be one of those shows, wasn't it? Like in April. And now that global title match is not going to happen between Tanahashi and Nemeth. I'd imagine that something else will be coming up for Nemeth. But the injury to Tanahashi appears to be more severe than initially thought. Boltin Oleg is going to be taking his spots on the 6th and 7th. Now, Oleg is in the New Japan Cup, so he can't do that forever. Tanahashi was not. Tanahashi was not in the Cup. He was going to be appearing in lower card matches throughout the tour, mostly in tags and things like that, where he can make an appearance for the fans as basically in a legend spot. But so Oleg can't do all those because he's in the tournament. But on the 6th and 7th, it'll be him. And the rest is up in the air here. So Tanahashi out, the Nemeth match not happening. The global title is not in flux. We have some information on it. Just so where are you on this whole thing? Go ahead and take us through your feelings on this whole situation.
Okay. So I'm fine with Tanahashi being injured. This kind of shit happens, right? You are
not that you want him to be, but
no.
It's
like guys getting injured is part of the process. It's the contingency plan. You need to be aware of these things.
Yeah.
The drops in the bucket for me here are Nemeth, the way he was introduced in here at Wrestle Kingdom and just kind of shoehorned into plans. Clearly they wanted to just get him into a high-level program from the get-go. He has a good match with Finlay. And then he gets on the mic and he says, hey, Tanahashi, I want you to be my tag partner tomorrow. And while this is funny, it displays to me kind of a fundamental lack of understanding of what's going on in New Japan at the time. And it says to me, Nick Nemeth is a free agent coming in to wrestle here. He's not really paying attention to what's going on and what these fans want, because Tanahashi, even though he was injured in that match with Riddle, there's no way in hell anyone's going to want him to tag with him on Okada's final night. And losing sight of that and making some type of statement just seemed silly at the time. And there weren't a whole lot of people totally locked in on this and realizing what the hell are you doing trying to get Tanahashi to tag with you on Okada's night? Maybe that was some type of heel maneuver. Maybe that was some kind of heel teeth, but I don't get any impression from him that he's trying to do anything other than win everybody over and try and like make with the best guys. Cool, fine. So yeah, it's the tag match, and I actually thought that tag match with Finlay and Goto and that he had
Taguchi. Yeah, Taguchi and Nemeth against Finlay and
Goto,
which was the original
name out of my mouth.
Yeah, which was the original plan, because like you mentioned, it's important to remember when he said, "Hey, Tanahashi, I want to team with you tomorrow." Tanahashi was booked in the damn Okada match.
Yes, and you're just like, what? Like, what even is this? Just like, be a part of the program. Like, don't make the program about you. Don't try and make this like a bigger thing than it is right now, because you are not big enough for this moment right now. Like, we will get there, but just cool your jets. Now we have a match with him, Macklin and Nemeth at Sacrifice. I said no surrender at the post show, and it's been driving me nuts all week that I got the name of the pay-per-view show wrong, but it's gonna be Sacrifice on March 8th. Okay. It's all but official. So now we have a title match here, but we have nothing in New Japan. They've not set him up for the New Japan Cup. There is no match on the horizon on Sakura Genesis. We have this title that Finlay just won and then just lost to a guy that has no matches on the book for New Japan, and it was all completely avoidable. We could have had matches against anyone, anywhere, lower card, anything, open challenge, something, anywhere. El Desperado, I don't know. We could have had, there are so many guys right now not on the card, and we could have had something just pop the crowd, something. But it's not according to plan. And it's starting to get frustrating because the plan seems to be sputtering in a lot of ways. You want to stick to the plan in one part, but you're flying by the seat of your pants when you have to put the Band-Aid on the booking in the other part, and it's getting really obvious and it's getting really frustrating. I look at that New Japan Cup bracketing now, and I think Hiroshi Tanahashi was probably supposed to face Hikuleo and not Boltin Oleg, and now Boltin Oleg is in that spot.
Perhaps.
And then Hikuleo would have beaten him in the first round, and then won and done.
Yeah, I mean, Tanahashi was on the undercard of one of these shows here, so it's hard to say. But when you look at this bracket, go ahead and bring the bracket up there, if you would, please. And when you look at this bracket, there are some things that jump out. And first of all is that TV champion Riddle is not in it. He's too busy talking to Ariel Helwani about how he was doing cocaine while he was on his WWE contract. So
that was a good look. I'm sure that won you over.
with the TV, or not the TV. Yeah, with the TV title sitting there. He's talking about how he was doing coke when he felt like doing coke, man.
Hey man, viewership, right? That's how you win the American audience.
No Matt Riddle, no Nick Nemeth. Now, of course, those guys are expensive, and it's hard to have there for the whole month and all this kind of stuff. We do get Jack Perry and the Shota Umino match. We'll talk about that. But after that, there's no Hiromu. There's no El Desperado, no juniors at all. So best guys in the junior heavyweight. Here's who's not there. All those guys aren't there. Who is? Yujiro Takahashi. It's Tonga Loa is, Chase Owens is, and
TJP is.
Well, but I'm just talking.
But that's what people will look at that and say TJP is in this. It's like they are looking at this thinking like, okay, TJP, Yujiro, like he is among those guys, even on the other side of the bracket. Like he is not exactly the most exciting guy in this thing, and that's kind of weird. Like I'm putting it in there because he does kind of fall in that category as we talk about it later.
Well, I would rather, what I was saying is you get Chase. I would gladly switch out Chase Owens and Yujiro Takahashi for El Desperado and Hiromu Takahashi. They got the wrong Takahashi, and I'd much rather see that. But this is what we have, and Tonga Loa is fine. I guess he's just a guy to do trios matches with Hikuleo and Phantasmo for the most part. I don't see him being pushed. I'd be surprised, but. It's a weak field, and Dunstan has sent in a few questions. He hasn't joined us yet, but And Colin is here. We're glad to see you, Colin, and all that. But we're talking about, do you think this is the weakest New Japan Cup in years? And absolutely it is. Like, this is, considering who has belts and who is, I don't know who's being pushed. I had my rant about that the other day. No one knows no one's being pushed hard, which means no one's really being pushed and no one's particularly getting over. But except Naito. I mean, we know Naito he's not in the tournament either. He's a champion. So, Dunstan says, do you think it was a mistake not having Hiromu or Despy in the New Japan Cup? Yes, it definitely lowers the quality of it. He says, he asked, do you think New Japan could become Pro Wrestling Noah if they don't book their young talent right? Yes, absolutely. I mean, a bunch of 35 to 40-year-old, 45 to 50-year-olds that we've seen 1,000 times. We're in danger of all that, and they keep cutting all these guys off of the knees. But again, I did my rant about that a few days ago. But this field is, to me, unimpressive.
You wanted something funny about the field? This is the 2024 field, okay?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Here's the 2023 field. Take a look at some of those bracketing corners. Sanada and Kenta on the left. Sanada and Kenta on the left. Maybe in the bottom corner, we got Zack Sabre Jr., Great Khan over in that kind of field. Over on the left.
Well, there's a lot of the same names.
Zack Sabre.
The same names.
And then go up to the top, and you see Shingo Takagi kind of in that little sweet spot right over in the top right. Go back to the other one. Oh, look, Shingo Takagi right in that little sweet spot up in the top right. It is, if you wanted to use the word uninspired, I feel like people would have an accurate argument for that. I looked at this bracket like, this looks incredibly familiar to last year. And I hope that they draw upon that in the storytelling for the New Japan Cup this year, in which there's some familiarity. I was going down there and I only got through half the side, but you look at 2023 and David Finlay wrestled Tangaloa in that one. And he wrestled Tomohiro Ishii twice last year in the New Japan Cup and the G1. He won all those matches. There's a sense that, like, if David Finlay runs this table, it's not really anything other than, everything that we've already seen before. And I'm not exactly sure we are in a position right now with the War Dogs to just keep business as usual. And I think there's probably stuff coming down the pike with them that makes a run for David Finlay seem actually unlikely for me. And that's interesting too. So
let's look at that, because the other name that jumped out to me that's not in this is Alex Coughlin. And we don't know what's going on with Alex. There are rumors abounding about Alex and his physical health. They might have some injuries. When, of course, I keep going back to that, this jumps out at me now. Connors and Maloney's hurt. He tore his bicep. A lot of that going on. A lot of bicep problems. But we have Clark Connors as a junior, and as we've already established, there aren't juniors in this tournament, so that's not shocking. Maloney banged up, so not surprising. Coughlin, that's one, and combined with the words we got from David Finlay, where he said, and I remember the quote pretty clearly because it kind of made me blink a few times, was, I was just told today, this was in backstage comments during the new to beginning, I was told today that War Dogs will never be the same again. And which the absence of Coughlin here doesn't bode well. And I just hope that Coughlin is able to come back, because dude was just getting rolling, and I thought he was an interesting character. And Gabe Kidd is hurt, or was recently. It looks like he's okay to come back. So there's a lot of,
or at least we think he is at this point, or they think he will be by the time that the Cup comes around.
Yeah,
the last time Coughlin was on a backstage comment, he flipped off the camera and then did the sign language for thank you, right?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, you never know.
He absolutely did. He made the gesture of thank you and sign language.
Well, what I was saying is we don't know what he knew then or suspected about.
But either way, he made the he made that moment.
Colin said, so Sanada, Evil, Goto, and Zack Sabre Jr. all got buys. Yes, there are guys that got buys for you. And we do have that answer for you. As it turns out, these are the 4 previous New Japan Cup winners in the field. So if you won the tournament before, you get a bye in the first round. That is how they did that, rather than you can't go by champions because most of them aren't in it. And the
so
never
do we
champ
have
is in it.
5 or 6 champions within these 4 buys?
Yeah, I think
Did
6.
2 of them win twice?
Sonata's won twice and Zack's won twice, right?
And then Evil and Hirooki Goto both won once.
Yeah, Goto's been to the finals other times, but I think that was his win. I think he lost to Naito once, and I'd have to go back and look all that up. But those are our previous winners, hence the buys in that situation. So, do we just want to break it down by little quadrants here?
Yeah, you want to go down bracketing and talk about?
Yeah, we'll do bracketology.
I entered an entry into Chris,
which is what you do with entries,
and I can just tell you. I just have fun with it, and let's see what we do, because I just kind of look at it like, this is what I would do. We could just call it our entry for the cup if you want, because you don't want your name on the finalist. I'm not sure I want my name on the finalist, but
I declined to do a bracket this year just because, as I stated a few days ago, I am flummoxed by I don't know what story New Japan is trying to tell anymore. Yeah. So I feel like it's just a useless exercise for me at this point, but someone's got to do it. Jeremy took the bullet.
I decided to find the most interesting path to a winner, and I believe that you'll all be calling for my head by the time this is done.
All right. Well, we're going to start visually in the upper left. I'll, for the folks that are listening to this and don't have the visuals, I will read off. Sonata is the bye. So he is not appearing in the first round of this tournament. Sonata, of course, won it last year, former champion. And after that, we have Yoshihashi versus Kenta. The winner of that will face Sonata. So Yoshihashi and Kenta. After that, the bottom half of that bracket gets more interesting in this way. We're stuck with Toru Yano versus Yujiro Takahashi in the first round, so we'll have to get through that match. But the winner of that one will face the winner of probably the most intriguing, one of the 2 most intriguing matchups in the first round. Jack Perry and Shota Umino facing each other.
In their main event of the cup.
Yeah.
They've got to be top of the card, right?
They are semifinal.
But of the cup final of the cup card.
Like they're the last cup match of the night.
Right,
yes.
right. Because it's the anniversary show.
Because
we got the rollicking Naito versus Show that night.
Yeah, exactly. So we have Naito versus Show in the main event, but underneath that, Shota Umino and Jack Perry. So to me, Jeremy, the winner of that Shota Umino Jack Perry match absolutely gets past the winner of Yano and Yujiro. Mm-hmm. And then Yoshihashi, Kenta, I don't really see either of them beating Sonata, and this is all just armchair stuff. So Sonata versus the winner of Umino and Perry is where we're pretty confident this part of the bracket is headed, correct?
Yeah, so did you know in singles matchups, Yoshihashi has never beaten Kenta?
Well, that's interesting, especially considering Kenta has the IWGP World Tag Team Championship, and Yoshihashi doesn't right now.
Yes, sir. So I'm going to go with Yoshihashi here, going on to face Sonata.
Okay.
We also presumably have Jack Perry versus Shota Umino lined up for Windy City, and we have to get a reason to get there. Now, Shota Umino the other day said he was going to Jungle Boy, I'll bitch his ass. And I don't know if he's going to get his opportunity at first crack.
By the way, I went back and listened to that. I'm pretty sure that's what he said. I believe he was trying to say, I'll beat his ass.
I don't care. It worked. Like, I want a t-shirt that says that, Steven.
Marketing, I tell you.
Toru Yano and Yujiro Takahashi. I'm just going to go with Toru Yano. Like,
who cares?
Why not?
Honestly, who cares?
Yeah. I feel like we don't need to have Jack Perry the face. We need to have Jack Perry the heel. So
yes.
Jack Perry and Toru Yano seems a little bit more likely.
No, makes sense.
So then we got Hinata Yoshihashi. Then we have Jack Perry and Toru Yano. Again, we get to Jack Perry and Hinata, and then we'll move on to the next bracket because we'll get to the.
Yeah, the only way I see this coming out differently really is if they had Umino beat Perry and Perry just go ape crap on him to set up something else, or do something to come back and screw over Shota in the next round. That's the only way I could see if just he went even more heel on him. But I agree with you. I think that probably the story is Perry somehow winning this one, and then what we figure in Chicago going back again.
Yeah,
I guess that's a guess. Again, New Japan's not really booking logically the way they used to.
The idea of having Shota and Jack stateside at some point. There's seasoning to having Jack Perry wrestle some matches in Japan, but ideally you want to make Shota Umino a star, and you want to change the conversation from Jack Perry and car windshields and old wrestlers and make it about this. So this is a great conversation about it to change that. So that's why I'm looking to that, but you have to have a brick wall for Jack Perry at some point, and he can't get too far in this thing. And I think that's why we have the guy that we had already, and we will get to that when we get there.
Colin says if Kenta gave a damn, he could easily get into the finals, in my opinion. And I mean, the old Kenta would have been somebody who would have been made for this tournament.
Sure.
Like before the injuries and before the NXT run, which for a while was really, really good, by the way. People forget that. There was good stuff in his NXT run until he tore up his shoulder. But and he was never really the same after that. And so, you're looking at that. And right now it looks like Kenta as one half of the tag team champs. It's a good opportunity to make Bishamon a top contender again. And you can always go back to Yoshihashi and Goto if you want to for that. It's again puzzling. They had the titles and then they didn't. Like why if they're going to go right back to them 3 months later, why did they lose them in the first? Never mind. Bottom left. This is
can we do the top right instead? And then do the bottom left last.
Yeah. Okay, so you want to go over where?
Go to Evil's bracket.
Evil's bracket. So Evil, he has the bye. He's the never openweight champion, but also a previous tournament winner. So he is going to be facing the winner of Hikuleo and Bolton Oleg. So intriguing matchup there. We got the young lion in that, and if not, either way, it's a person considered a babyface at this time facing Evil in the second round, which is probably smart. And before we break that down further, there is the another really interesting first round match in this part of the bracket. Shingo Takagi facing Yuya Uemura. And it'll be a look at Uemura since the head shaving thing. Also, just a match against Shingo Takagi is always going to be important. The winner of that one will face the winner of Gabe Kidd and Callum Newman. Hopefully Kidd is healthy again. And Callum Newman, of course, has really been turning it on. He's been impressive. So I expect Kidd absolutely to beat him because Newman just isn't presented as that level yet. Although, again, New Japan Cup upset specials are possible. Uemura, seeing what is going on with Uemura post-head shaving, to me, is one of the more interesting aspects of the first round of this tournament. And he's facing Shingo freaking Takagi here. So that to me is that has my interest. I'll be watching that one carefully.
Yeah, so I definitely agree with you that Gabe Kidd and Callum Newman have some upset special potential. But I am going to lean towards Gabe Kidd winning that match because I think that there has to be a little more spark to the card on the 13th than Callum Newman just yet.
Yeah.
And that's no dig to Callum Newman. He's already won over crowds, especially with his match with Ishii back in December on those Road to New Beginning matches. It's just, I don't think it's his time yet. And I don't think he is the member of the United Empire that's going to be going, that has the potential in this thing. So I'm just gonna hold off on him for now. So I'm gonna say Gabe Kidd, and then with Yuya Uemura and Shingo Takagi, I just think we are in the tear down portion of Yuya Uemura's career, and Shingo Takagi is going to move past him. Yeah. So we shall get Shingo and Gabe Kidd at some point. And I'm just gonna say it's gonna be a fantastic match, and Shingo Takagi will likely win that one according to what I was looking at. But if Gabe Kidd won it, I wouldn't be shocked. You know what I mean? It's just the fans win at that point. Hikuleo over Bolton Oleg, who may have been Tanahashi, if I'm reading the tea leaves right, gets stopped by Evil. Then we have Evil versus Shingo Takagi in the semifinals.
Which could set up potentially putting Shingo Takagi back in the never open weight title picture if you want to, or you could just have Evil go all the way to the semifinals with the idea of have that one heel that nobody wants to win threatening it, getting within a breath of it, just so that the fans can sit there and just go, oh, it's not going to be him, is it? That little feeling of that tension, a little tension of dread in there is good for drama. Or like you said, Shingo Takagi might win this thing too. It's another side of it. So that one could go either way. All right.
Because they have teased, they absolutely have teased LIJ matchups throughout the year. Yeah. And it is something that we also want to see is some of these. Maybe you get to knock these out once in a lifetime or while they're all together, or maybe you wait until they all break up and then you do it then. But it doesn't
this is going to come. This will come into play in the next part of the bracket we're going to talk about, because it is an opportunity, the Cup, to have a big match for the world title between faction mates that doesn't involve splitting up the faction. You can't have a member of LIJ win this thing, challenge Tetsuya Naito without it being a huge turn. Hey, I won the Cup. Right. You're the champion. Here we go. So it is an opportunity. It doesn't mean they will, and they haven't much in the past. There's not a big history of them doing that, but it is an opportunity to do so.
Yeah, it was my hope and dream initially to have Hiromu Takahashi and Naito do this kind of match. But I guess, there's no plan for Hiromu to be anything other than a junior heavyweight at this point. And if he's going to face two junior heavyweights in back-to-back title defenses or whatever, like they're looking at it at the anniversary show would show, that isn't a rousing start to his title reign, being a Sonata defense, a show defense, and then another junior heavyweight. So they're probably looking for somebody representing more as a heavyweight in this, and creating that cachet. So, and Hiromu wasn't the guy this time, but creating a guy within LIJ to challenge for him absolutely should be something in this reign of Naito's.
Bottom right, let's go to that one, and that is Zack Sabre Jr.'s bracket. So Zack is moving on to the second round no matter what. He will face the winner of Taichi and Ren Narita. Now, this is where I think they're just flat out teasing us, because I think they want to dangle the idea of the Tekkers wrestling each other in the second round. I think we're going to get Ren Narita screwing over Taichi in that one. But on the other side of that one, Ren versus Taichi, winner gets Zack. Okay. The other side is El Phantasmo and Mikey Nichols from TMDK. Another opportunity, Jeremy, perhaps for someone to beat one half of a tag team title holding team and set up a shot, TMDK against Phantasmo and Hikuleo, if they want to, or it could just simply be Phantasmo moving on. The winner of that match will be Yota Tsuji and Jeff Cobb. So Yota Tsuji and Jeff Cobb is an intriguing little matchup here in the first round, and another one that you can make a case either way for. Tsuji just coming off one of his big wins, that hair versus hair match. Jeff Cobb's Jeff Cobb.
Mm-hmm. I think they're going to give Yota Tsuji a little something, because one of these guys has to, have something coming out of this. I don't think Yuya is, and I don't think Shota is. And this is the third night, and we got two of these young guns in here. It's entirely possible Jeff Cobb puts him down very quickly, and I wouldn't be shocked.
Yeah,
but
disgusted.
I'm leaning towards Yota, because I think you have to give the Japanese fans a little bit more of that.
All right, so that would make Yota Tsuji against the winner of Phantasmo Hikuleo.
What do you think, El Phantasmo? I kind of thought El Phantasmo.
Yeah.
I also thought it was weird that Shane Haste announced his bookings were completely free in March, the day before these brackets were announced.
Right. And in fact, Nichols is teaming with Zack on the undercard of a lot of this. So that's strange, isn't it? That's weird.
Just didn't have room on the bracketing, so maybe they thought they had more people that they don't have. So,
and it could be a cost-cutting thing too. We'll talk about some of the Bush
weren't available, so guy on the other side had to go, and then if two guys aren't available, two more guys have to go to get the bracketing to work. It just kind of it's the economics of this layout. So, all right, I got Yota Tsuji and El Phantasmo. I got Ren Narita and Zack Sabre Jr. I got Zack Sabre Jr. and Yota Tsuji in the semis.
Okay. All right. So Zach, and you think it'll be Zach and Yota moving on from that one. All right. So we're down to our last little bracket. We will talk about the semifinals and the finals here, but we want to get the early stuff out of the way. So on this end of the bracket, this is the Hirooki Goto end of it, his quadrant. Goto moving on to the second round, having won the tournament before. He will face the winner. Oh, here's a tease for you. Tomohiro Ishii against Chase Owens. All I am asking is to get Ishii and Goto in the second round. I just want to see it. Hopefully we will. So that's what I'm rooting for. On the other half of the bracket, we have Tongaloa against Great-O-Khan. Man, I'm hoping that's Great-O-Khan. I mean, the poor guy, unless he's getting punished for the whole thing with Okada, we don't even know that wasn't part of the plan. We don't know that. We're just, it was so weird that he just did that whole King of Pro Wrestling thing. But Tongaloa, Great-O-Khan, I would hope that would be Great-O-Khan. The other half of that, David Finlay against TJP. Now this, Jeremy, caught your eye for a few reasons. And tell us about this, because you have a perspective on this that the vast majority of people didn't take. And you explained it briefly to me before we went on the air, but you have me intrigued. So go ahead and tell the folks a little bit of what you were telling me earlier.
Well, Steven, what I was telling you earlier was that I believe that TJP is the upset special for this entire tournament. And I kind of think that TJP is going to win a lot. He is going to beat David Finlay, and it is going to be the upset special of the entire tournament. The internet is going to explode on the 7th when they wake up and they find out that TJP has beaten David Finlay. Why do I think that this is the case?
Go ahead.
TJP has a new gimmick that was debuted at Wrestle Kingdom. It's the As Wong, which is a supernatural creature that is summoned and or levels him up to a degree that is both mythical and video game-like. TJP also has a pedigree in going very, very far in tournaments like the Cruiserweight Classic against other people like Kota Ibushi and Zack Sabre Jr. He's got that. With that said, TJP just lost to David Finlay in San Jose in a great 13-minute match.
It was a very good match.
I am not necessarily sure the results are going to be the same while the War Dogs are in a teardown right now. And David Finlay has declared that if he wins this, he's going after the Global Cup, the global title rather than the IWGP title. They've already advertised that the winner of this is going to face Naito at Sakura Genesis.
Mm-hmm.
TJP has also said in backstage comments that he is going to heavyweight and that he is going to make his stand and he is going to have a presence here. With the absence of Will Ospreay, there is a philosophy in New Japan booking about plug and play. Next man up. You're the guy. And TJP does have a lot of the qualities that they saw in Will Ospreay as a high-flying babyface that can work long matches. And
he's laughing. He's laughing because Colin says, "Oh, please be right, Jeremy. I'm begging TJP to be Jay White Light." Is how he said.
They have a role for Finlay as a Gaijin heel. They have a role for Zack Sabre Jr. as one of the top baby faces, but they had room for another top Gaijin, and I think that's where TJP is headed. And I think this is his debutante debut, if that makes any sense. We are going to see something for TJP. And hey, listen, next week, if this doesn't work out for me, I'm going to eat the biggest bag and I'm going to be so happy for it because I'm not sure this is a great idea. But I think that when I look at this, I see TJP having some momentum, and I think it's going to start with him beating David Finlay right out the gate.
With that said, so you think TJP is moving through this bracket here, and he will make the semifinals? You believe?
Yes, I think he will beat David Finlay. I think Great-O-Khan will beat Tangaloa, and then we will have TJP versus Great-O-Khan, which will be one of those symbolic, yes, I can beat the biggest guy in my stable kind of match that kind of is one step towards the elevation. At the same time, Tomohiro Ishii faces Chase Owens, and then we have Ishii versus Goto. I don't think that they want to do Owens versus Goto because they're already going to do Yoshihashi versus Kenta, and that's enough for them presumably to challenge the tag titles at some point.
Yeah.
So we get what you want, Tomohiro Ishii versus Hirooki Goto, but I think we end up with TJP versus Hirooki Goto.
Okay. And so with TJP moving on. And on the other side, we had Sonata coming out of that, his part of the bracket, right? We weren't going to totally shut him down.
I think Jack Perry's purpose is to further the feud of Shota Umino. So there's no purpose in the cup beyond that. You get 3 matches with him, and in which he wins 2 and loses 1. He has already lost to Sonata at last year's Forbidden Door. There's no issue with him losing again right here and now to Sonata.
So with that said, Sonata and TJP on your end of the bracket, they're on the left-hand side of the bracket for the Cup Finals. Now, let's go on to the other side. Dunson says it feels uninspired booking with the tag belts. Bishamon wins it, but we'll see what they do with that. But that's just a theory. It just seems set up for there to be some sort of Bishamon run at the Bullet Club team. On the other side, we had Evil extent going out a ways, and you also had Shingo Takagi.
I had Evil and Shingo Takagi, and I think Shingo Takagi is going to beat Evil and move on to the Final 4, which will set him up at some point for a match with Evil for the Never title.
And then on the bottom half of the bracket, you can do, we have Zack Sabre Jr., and you think Yota Tsuji, correct?
I think Yota Tsuji is the guy to do it. But I think it's Yota Tsuji and Zack Sabre Jr., and then we get Zack Sabre Jr. going over.
And you think Zack is going to go to the finals and face Sonata or TJP? You think TJP?
No, I think Shingo is going to beat Zack Sabre Jr.
Shingo going to the finals.
Shingo versus TJP.
I think so too, by the way.
To be a great match, because that will have TJP beating 2 former IWGP World Champions, also a New Japan Cup winner, another New Japan Cup winner, and there is a lot of pedigree to put him on the map as a firm heavyweight main eventer if he goes that route and put somebody that New Japan can establish that, frankly speaking, AEW is not interested in him. WWE is not interested in him. He's going to be around doing New Japan stuff, and he can be someone that they can build around as a veteran. He's been doing this for 20 years.
All right. So with that in mind, Shingo Takagi on one side, who's he going to face in the finals?
TJP.
Okay. All right. And who do you think is winning?
God help me, Steven. I've got TJP winning this whole thing.
All right. I'm going to take Shingo Takagi, by the way.
Okay.
I think this is how they're going to set up Shingo and Naito. But again, I don't know what story New Japan is trying to tell here. So this is why I didn't fill out a bracket. I don't really have a strong read on what's going on. Clearly, I'm not sure they do. So
plug and play, baby. This is uninspired booking to reset the landscape rather than give us like immediate interesting feuds, and you know what I mean? Like this is
I know what you mean. I know
this is landscaping. This is not decorating.
I know for sure that I would much rather be watching Shota Umino defend the never openweight title against Jack Perry than another Evil run with it. I know that's what I'd much rather be watching right now. So, and I damn sure would rather be watching El Desperado against Tetsuya Naito instead of Sho. So
my friend John, he was texting me. He was listening to the show on Monday, and he was talking to me about this, and he was saying that he really thinks that they went heavy on the House of Torture because there is so much uncertainty about who in Bullet in the War Dogs is available. You've already got Drilla Maloney with a torn bicep. You don't know how healthy Coughlin is. Gabe Kidd, presumably is wrestling here. Clark Connors is around, but, like there's not exactly a purpose for him. they're holding the titles, and those titles are somewhat in absentia until they figure out what's going on with everybody who, what, where, why, then. So this whole heavy on the House of Torture makes sense because there's no other evil heel group in New Japan right now.
With the way those guys are getting hurt, by the way, I would put Clark Connors in bubble wrap until Super Juniors. Just make sure he's there for. Dunstan says, I'm going for a gamble. Gabe Kidd, if he's staying, should win the New Japan Cup. And that kind of speaks to what we were talking about, is that we're not. I mentioned that David Finlay might have gone into a holding pattern by losing that global title just because they're not totally sure who are in the War Dogs right now. And until that's ironed out, there's not a whole lot of point in giving anyone a big shove and a push there. Of all the weird cut them off at the knees booking from New Beginning, that one bothered me the least, I suppose. Desperado drove me insane, so did Shota, but yeah, that was a thought there. So
never count out New Japan, I guess.
Okay, Scott Edwards is here from 5-Star Joshi Show and all the programming about Joshi Wrestling. He says, hey, I was on this show last year. Yeah, that's right. He did do Bracketology with us. Jack Perry beating Shota Umino is the end for me. Is the end of me, he says. The end of me. Well, I mean, I think I don't think that's going to be the finale. I think eventually Shota is going to go over, but I do think it's going to be probably in a big match in Chicago or somewhere else down the road. I'm not saying it has to be Chicago, but this seems like the Jack Perry going over on Shota so that Shota can go and get his hands on him in a bigger place. That's what I'm hoping.
Scott, tell me that you loved I'll bitch his ass. I know you did.
I'll bitch his ass. Oh, gosh. All right. So a couple other questions right here. Dunstan asked this one, too. With the amount of
Sorry,
people
YouTube, if you get mad at us, I didn't mean it.
Should New Japan ask for some talent from other promotions? You got to pay them then. And one of the things that we're going to talk about is the business end for Bushiroad, and Q4 was ugly. Q4 was ugly. Yen is down. Business was down. It's there's not a lot of cash floating around. So while I would love to just say get all these new people, me too, Dunstan, and we all the same names we've been tossing around for weeks right here. They might not have the cash right now. Might not have the money to pay a whole bunch of people coming in, and could end up being a factor.
Yeah, I got nothing.
Okay. So let's run down what is going on at the anniversary show on March 6th, and then we're going to talk about March 7th. Those are the two shows that will happen before we reconvene here next week, and it's the first two nights of the Cup. Also gives us some ideas of other things that are going on in the company, and then we're going to get into some news and notes because
look at it. Look at the amazingness of our main event.
Oh boy, Tetsuya Naito and Show. Scott is saying, someone tell New Japan to call Luke Jacobs. Can't stress it enough.
Oh, there are a lot of people advocating for that one, and
sure,
they absolutely should. I watched that Rev Pro show. He was the good with JJ Gale.
Yeah, oh yeah. And I mean there is talent. I think that a lot of the Rev Pro might be a smart way to go because those guys probably aren't asking for nearly the money that some of the guys in America are, and that could help. But still, you still run into the same situation with the yen versus the pound that you do with the yen versus the dollar, maybe even worse. But New Japan show, the anniversary show, Naito versus Show, non-title, nothing's on the line here, just a match between the two of them. So you'd imagine Naito gets the win. And Colin says it's the worst main event they could have booked here. I think Sonata versus Show might have been worse, but I get your point. This is pretty bad. This is pretty bad.
Underwhelmed.
Yeah. Jack Perry.
It will be I expect it to be a 20-minute comedy match. I expect a lot of House of Torture bullshit, but I also expect Naito, frankly, to be positioned as the new god of New Japan that can overcome everything and everyone and all bullshit. Everything that Okada could do a week ago is now that power is now been transferred to Naito. Like he will not brook such bullshit.
Jack Perry will face Shota Umino. That's a New Japan Cup match. We will also have Kenta versus Yoshihashi in the Cup. Winner will face Sonata in the second round. Then we will get Yano and Yujiro, with the winner getting Umino and Perry. Of course, we're going from the top down here. So by the time we get to Perry and Umino, we will know if it's going to be Yano or Yujiro. Probably going to tell you a little bit more about who wins, too. Just 5 guys against House of Torture. in all skate here. That is Sanada, Doki, Uemura, and Taichi against Evil, Ren Narita, Yoshinobu Kanemaru, and Dick Togo, just in case you wondered who was going to go over on that one. So Dick Togo's in the match. On the other side, we have a 6-man tag with Callum Newman teaming with Catch 2-2. So Akira and TJP. Akira is on the tour, just not in the cup. Against the War Dogs, that's Geto, Finlay, and Gabe Kidd. So there you have that. And after that, El Desperado, Tomohiro Ishii, and Hirooki Goto with Bolton Oleg instead of Hiroshi Tanahashi. They'll face Bushi, Shingo Takagi, Yota Tsuji, and Hiromu Takahashi. As I mentioned, that was supposed to be Tanahashi in that one. We'll also see a tag match underneath. This is interesting. Mikey Nichols and Zack Sabre Jr. as TMDK against Hikuleo and El Phantasmo, which will probably be a pretty good match. And Homa and Tangaloa will face the Great Okan and Jeff Cobb in the opener. Life is pain, says Scott, with Yano versus Yujiro. Yeah, we mentioned that too. We just said we're just going to have to get through this together. We're just going to. I feel
like we're just going to get Yano like taping up Yujiro against the thing and getting some sense of shade and fraud satisfaction that somebody in House of Torture gets their comeuppance somewhere in the last couple weeks, because it's all been House of Torture all the time, and so this might just be the little bit of happiness that we get that somebody is handled, even if it's Toru Yano, the most impervious face of them all.
That will probably be my sandwich match in there, I'd imagine. So,
sure.
On March 7th, this is now they're back. That was in the Oda Ward Gymnasium. That's the Oda Ward Gymnasium is, of course, where they're going to do the anniversary show. It's where the very first New Japan Pro Wrestling show ever was, and so they're going back there for the anniversary. On Tuesday, March 7th, they're back at Korakuen Hall, our home away from home. And that one will have TJP versus Finlay on top. So there you go.
Upset special, baby. It's all right there.
Semifinal. Tangaloa versus Great Okan. But the winner gets TJP and Finlay, I guess. So there you have it. Then
if Great Okan wins this, everybody's going to think Finlay's going to win the main event.
Tomohiro Ishii against Chase Owens. The winner getting Hirooki Goto with a bye. If Ishii loses, we riot.
I mean, yo riot. I will depressingly accept the reality of the situation and talk about it later that afternoon on the podcast.
I'm rioting. No, by the way, it'll just be me in my house. But no.
This match will happen, everybody, and then you can join us every week at 5:30 p.m. Eastern on Fight Game Media's YouTube channel, where we will recap the New Japan Cup every Thursday as part of our coverage on the YouTube channel. So please join us every Thursday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern for Speaking of Strong Style. Thank you.
All right. Don't forget also, if you're listening on the podcast, to like and subscribe. You do that on YouTube, but rate us, leave us a review. It helps people find the show. And most importantly, if you know a New Japan curious friend, word of mouth is the best way to get anything out when it comes to art. So, and here we are. Dunstan Williams says, seriously, Luke Jacobs would be worth the money than Riddle long term. Yeah, I agree with you. And you know how I feel about Riddle. I don't think Riddle should have been here in the first place. I'd much rather be watching Luke Jacobs. So
make him a war dog. He'd be a great war dog.
Yeah, maybe. But we have our own theory about who might be another war dog.
There is a bullet in the chamber. You know who I'm talking about.
Before that match, though, before we get to the cup matches on the 7th, we will have the 910th meeting between LIJ and Just Five Guys. And my only note in this match is, why can't we be done with this? I don't understand why we're still doing these. Then we'll have Honma, El Desperado, and Yo. And now we're getting into some prelims here where a guy in each match is going to tell you who wins this series. So Honma, Desperado, and Yo against Shota Umino, against Evil, Sho, Kanemaru, and Ren Narita. And then we get into some other things here, some prelims. Ishimori, Gabe Kidd, and Kenta will be facing Callum Newman, Jeff Cobb, and Francesco Akira. We will also see Yano and Togi Makabe, against Nichols and Sabre. So again, TMDK without Shane Haste. So Nichols and Sabre. And then we'll have Bolton Oleg stepping in for Tanahashi again, teaming with Bishamon. So Yoshihashi and Goto teaming with Bolton against Jado, Phantasmo, and Hikuleo. So that's going to be the opener on the 7th.
Steven,
Yo.
I've had many things to say about New Japan World and the way that it works now, and both good and bad. I will say these two cards, the matches listed on here, is the exact reason why we now have match-by-match choice on the New Japan shows and not just up and down the card. You know that there are people that are going to want to cherry-pick a few of these matches only, and only the diehards, and the people that have podcasts like you and I that will be watching everything on this card. But let's be clear, it will really only be the New Japan Cup matches that people will be really focused on right now. And that's fair. You know, like New Japan Cup should be the most important thing going on in New Japan. And I'm not even sure it even feels that way.
We will watch, so you don't have to, basically. So, but I will be watching all of it, and I'll be taking notes and things. So we'll be ready. Also, worth noting, by the way, here is an IWGP Championship that we have some information on. So that is all going on 6th and 7th, and we'll be back on the 7th. So we'll be talking about everything going forward after that a little further. But we do know that Giulia, who just defeated Natsuko Tora in a wonderful no disqualification match in Korakuen Hall, really good match, kept the NJPW Strong Women's title, but has been challenged again and will face Stephanie Vaquer in Korakuen Hall for the NJPW Strong title. Now, we assume at some point Giulia's got to lose this thing, because she's very publicly said that she's free as a bird. She is leaving Stardom and going off, we presume, to help Rossi Ogawa with his new promotion, and then perhaps on to WWE after that. But at some point, she's got to lose this bout. I'll tell you what, that match Jeremy had with Tora had a very interesting feel to it in the crowd, because you could tell a lot of the crowd thought they were seeing the title switch, right? Because any title match from Giulia is the belt's in severe jeopardy, just because you figure she's got to drop it on the way out, right? So this could be it. But the next defense of the NJPW Strong Women's Championship at Korakuen Hall on what is a big weekend for Stardom, by the way. These shows on the 9th and 10th, pretty exciting stuff going on, Adam. But Giulia against Stephanie Vaquer, who's been doing wonderfully in CMLL and coming over to Korakuen to challenge.
She's the right choice. In all honesty, she's been grinding hard on all these strong shows, and I didn't know about the crazy personal life that she has.
If you don't know, like, one of the new Dinamitas tried to kill her, like is in jail for attempted murder.
Quattrero from AAA.
Yeah.
She is a survivor, and she is impressive in many different ways.
Yeah.
And like, we all just need to get behind this one, because she is in fact something special. And we talk about finding these diamonds in the rough here and there and everywhere, and giving them the opportunity and the platform. And Stephanie Vaquer is her. Like, I need to I'm going to beat the drum on this one a little bit, because from the moment I saw her in that tournament last year for this title, it was like, where the hell did you come from? And when are we going to get to see more of this talented wrestler? So,
this will be a good one. And, you know, I saw her challenge Mayu Iwatani for the IWGP Women's Championship, and it was real good, and enjoyed that thoroughly. I mean, I was kind of thunderstruck seeing Iwatani myself, but Vaquer did very well in that match. Iwatani carried her higher than Vaquer, I think, usually gets. Vaquer is good. Iwatani's one of the greatest ever. So, I mean, it was a heck of a match. And but Vaquer is in there with Giulia, who's one of the best in the world. There's no reason why this shouldn't be fabulous. So it should be a terrific match.
There are divisions in pro wrestling, and like dividing lines now. Stardom and Rossi Ogawa's new promotion, where Stardom ends up working with in the States, who Rossi Ogawa ends up working in the States, who Giulia will be loyal to coming down the line. These new faces that are making their way, this match should be one of the most important matches of 2024 for women's wrestling, because it will put a new face on the map that, we are trying to put people on the come up. We are trying to put women's talent on the come up, and we just need to make it happen. And this is a golden opportunity.
Well, there are some good signs, because they are also going to be doing an all women's show at Friday night in CMLL for the first time. The Friday night show at Arena Mexico is going to be an all women's show coming up in March, and that's they've done it before on other nights and in other towns, but Arena Mexico.
Do you think that this is a rematch? Giulia tries to challenge for it, and
I think that Friday is before this, though. I think that Friday night show is before this. I'd have to double check.
I thought this was on the 10th. And then they were doing that show. Oh, I'm sorry. I have a friend going to see Arena Mexico on the 22nd, and I got that date in my head for that reason. My bad.
Scott is saying this is a big win for me. Vaquer is a champion, and I hopefully don't have to see this purple belt in Japan for a while. Yeah, hopefully they can bring it back this side, which is where the strong belt should be. IWGP should be over there. Well, by the way, on the 9th in Korakuen Hall, I'm excited as hell about this one. First of all, Natsupoi is back. We love the Murder Pixie. She is teaming back up with Sayori Anu, and she is facing Chihiro Hashimoto, and get ready for it, Sarai. Nice. Finally. In a Stardom ring, which is pretty awesome. And she's been on the independent scene in Japan since being completely bungled by Shawn Michaels, the dime store cowboy, and all the rest there. So at NXT, who I guess think that she was an anime character or something. The less said about that crap from them, the better. So yeah. Pretty good stuff coming. So yeah, well, Dunstan says sorry to Stardom, please. Well, I mean, she's going to be there. She's going to wrestle Poi and Anu. So with that, we have some other news and notes now that we want to get to. April 6th, the Sakura Genesis. That's back at Sumo Hall. Naito will face the New Japan Cup winner there. So that's the only match we have right now for Sakura Genesis. But we know that is at Sumo Hall, Ryogoku Kujikan, on April the 6th.
Who could it be? The outline tells you it could be a young lion.
I think that's about as generic as an outline as it gets, isn't it? Boy, that is wrestler right there. So
I got another correction from last week. I said,
oh God, what do we screw up now?
I said that Zack Sabre Jr. was going to be wrestling in a Noah match. It's in fact DDT. That he was
I thought you said DDT.
I think I said Noah, and I had to make sure that I got it right.
Okay.
So he will be April 7th, DDT, which will take him out of any planning whatsoever for any of the WrestleMania weekend shows, Ring of Honor, anybody whatsoever. Zack Sabre Jr. is staying in Japan.
Yeah, but look at the team he's facing. He and Chris Brooks facing Mao and Yuki Ueno. Those are two good-looking dudes there.
So we also have a title match this weekend that, we don't really consider it much of a New Japan title, but it is, in fact, a New Japan title match this weekend with Eddie Kingston versus Bryan Danielson. Could be a pretty fantastic match. Steven, are you going to plan on watching it?
No, but I'm going to hear all about it, I'm sure. I don't
will
really
report back for us both.
Okay, good. Not a knock on AEW, but no, I'm not going to be able to watch this one live right there. So that, but I understand.
Sometimes I have to watch shows that you can't make.
Right, yeah, and vice versa. We tend to divide the labor here. But Sam from Power Bombshells is going to be there live in Greensboro. She's going to be at Sting's final match. She's making the trip to Greensboro for this one. So Power Bombshells 1 p.m. on Sunday, and make sure you get to hear her talk about that. I mean, that should be terrific. It's going to be exciting. Let's see.
Later on tonight, we have a match that you're going to be super excited about. Are you ready for this one?
Oh boy, I'm cracking my knuckles.
Matt Riddle versus Bad Dude Tito.
All right. Well,
I have conflicting feelings about this because this could be awesome.
This is MLW, correct? This is an MLW, right?
This is MLW, but it is in fact a New Japan sponsored match. It is a New Japan World Television title match that will be tonight on Triller TV. Yeah. And this was set up last week on the shows with Matt Riddle talking to Zack Sabre Jr. and Zack Sabre Jr. saying, hey, you got to go through one of the TMDK guys. And this is that TMDK guy that he has before we're setting up Matt Riddle and Zack Sabre Jr. at some point.
Got it. So that is at the Melrose Ballroom.
Yeah.
Wow,
there is a show the same weekend as Windy City Riot, but it is on the other side of the world. Do you think that the same people wrestling on Windy City will be wrestling in Taipei on the 14th of April in Taiwan?
Yeah, that's possible. They'll send some people over there. Looking at the poster they've made for that event in Taipei, there are some folks. There might be a little bit of overlap, but not a whole lot.
Yeah,
but it's possible. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's really interesting. That to me said, oh, they're really going to try and split the card and see what they can do with splitting that roster. And with a depleted roster right now, I kind of think it's bold, but at the same time, New Japan can do what it wants.
Yeah. Okay. So that's I'm looking at the. Okay, so that Melrose Ballroom is that in Manhattan? No, it's not. Okay. All right. I was like, why do I know what that was? You know what I just learned, by the way, Jeremy? You know I'm a venue nerd, right?
You are a venue nerd?
A wrestling venue nerd. I'm always interested in the arenas and all this kind of stuff. But
yes, I do know this about you.
You know the Hammerstein Ballroom where ECW was a lot? They had their events at the Hammerstein Ballroom in New York. And Raw, in the early days of Raw, was taped in the Manhattan Center in New York. That was that kind of the thing. I had the overhanging balcony, the small building, like the real cozy, very early Monday Night Raws.
Sure.
Were at that same building. Those are just two different rooms in the same building. The Manhattan Center and the Hammerstein Ballroom. It's in the same complex, right down from Macy's on 34th.
That's probably how they found it in the first place.
Maybe it is. Yeah, they just stumbled across it. Is that one cheaper? Yes, Hammerstein's cheaper, Paul. Okay, we'll take that one. But anyway, let's see. Anyway, that's an aside. News and notes. I wanted to get into this. First of all, we found out that Azumi and Mina Shirakawa are going to be at the Windy City Riot. That was announced this past week. So Mina Shirakawa, we just saw her at the New Beginning against Mayu Iwatani. And, of course, Azumi, who's one of the great high-speed wrestlers and someone I believe should be pushed a little harder than she has been. Never mind all that. But she is going to be she's great. And we actually saw her, what was it, with Mercedes and Hazuki, I believe, in a match last year. So, or before, obviously before injury. But yeah, anyway, Azumi and Mina Shirakawa coming to Chicago.
As well as Stephanie Vaquer.
Mina there to speak a little English, probably, to help Azumi out. But Mina's terrific too. We know that Tama Tonga looks like he's heading to WWE, Jeremy. It looks like that is indeed where he's going.
I felt like I knew where he was going to head up next. And it's all lining up for young Tama Tonga with his career ahead of him. I'm very happy for him.
Young Tama Tonga.
Perhaps in NXT, learning the ropes.
Yeah. This is the one. That's also something that Dunstan said. Are we worried that they're turning into Noah with all these old? I was just thinking, like we were just saying, who needs to turn? Shingo Takagi and Taichi, and we're right. And we're all excited the idea of Shingo and Taichi. They're both over 40. Like Taichi's almost my age, and like he's like 44, and Shingo's 41. I mean, new talent, guys. New talent.
Like this is what happens when you have Okada on top. Is that the window is missed for a lot of these other guys, and you can't artificially recreate a window because the audience has already been conditioned to decide where they stand in their eyes.
And another piece of news that might end up having an effect on New Japan, certainly the strong shows in the United States, 16 CML guys, through a whole bunch of bureaucratic snafus, had their visas canceled or dropped or
not good.
And so there are a lot of guys. It's going to take a while because it's all red tape and things for them to get visas to work in the United States. Now, this doesn't keep them from working in Japan. That's a whole separate thing. So if they wanted to bring somebody over for Super Juniors or G1, that this doesn't really get in the way of that. But
it will affect Windy City. It will affect Resurgence. It might not affect Resurgence, but you have to plan for it affecting Resurgence.
And this is by no means any kind of complete list at all. I believe there are 16 different guys, but Hechicero's on there, Templario, Soberano Jr., and Mascara Dorada, just a lot of people that we were kind of hoping to see more of. That doesn't look like they'll be able to work in the United States until the red tape gets all cleared out. And that's really unfortunate. And it looks like it was just more confusion than malevolence, that there was just issues trying to get visas and they had to be pulled back because something wasn't done correctly, and now these guys are kind of out in the cold a little bit. They can work Canada for AEW. That's still a possibility. But again, doing anything with New Japan strong in the United States, it looks like that's going to be on hold for a lot of the guys that we really enjoyed seeing at Fantastica Mania.
Yeah, I honestly, it sucks because there were a lot of guys heating up and a lot of talent heating up for that matter. And you kind of like a bureaucratic snafu, guy working in the office that wasn't working there anymore. Like, how can you like handicap the careers of so many people and just not be like, sorry guys, you were just on the hottest streak you've ever had in your life, but you know, maybe in 4 months we get to pick up where you left off. You got to be so frustrated.
Yeah, it definitely is.
And I hope that there wasn't any malicious intent on anyone's part to like hamstring these careers, because everybody is going for the bag. And there were a lot of people that were starting to get some real attention. And, you know, the Kingo and Tarus and a couple of the other guys, they were making their name up, and then they're starting to get hurt and disappear. And there was a demand for this, for Lucha Libre, and CMLL was starting to take that opportunity, and they were making all these demands like AAA talent can't be anywhere near whatever show and whatever. And it's just one of those, like, if you can't deliver now, like, are these deals still going to be able to work in a couple of months, or are they going to move on to the next thing? And it's just, the timing couldn't be worse.
Yeah, it's true. And, you know, it's just one of those deals where it can get cleared up, but it's up to somebody sitting at a desk in some office building somewhere to get to it. It's not, you know, there's no sense of urgency on it to get these visas done. Unfortunately, they're just going to have to wait and see how it goes. So, business call for Bushiroad. Now, this is, I want to bring this up, especially it pertains to some of Dunstan's questions about who they should bring in, who they shouldn't, what's the state of the business. He also says, by the way, should Sonata and Tana take a break? Well, Tana has to. Tana is hurt to the point he has to. Sonata, maybe so. I mean, maybe after he's out of the, I don't think he will, but it would probably be a good idea to take a bit of a break. But again, you know, with it's just not a wealth of people coming in, but it might be a good idea for him to take some time off and get healthy, because we saw at the end of that Naito match that injury was really affecting him. But you know, that also that ethos in Japan is still different. In the United States, it's a little bit better about guys sitting out and recovering before coming back and just, you know, taking time off. The Japanese thing is still just like, if you can get in the ring, you do. So it's still, it's not healthy, but it is still that ethos there. But we had a bit of a business call. As it turns out, once all the numbers were computed, pro wrestling is about 13% of the Bushiroad business. As it turns out, so I'm getting all this from some things that were printed in the Observer last week, also, but the wrestling business was down 14.9% from Q4 of 2022 to Q4 of 2023. So it dropped to almost 15% year over year. And the company put most of that on STARDOM for having a rough fourth quarter. I believe both fewer shows and some pretty weakly attended ones when everybody in STARDOM was hurt. But, you know, it wasn't a stellar time for either end of it. I also mentioned
they also didn't have historic X over last year when they had it the year before. So.
There were a bunch of things, and you know, the thing is too, Q4 is always the weakest quarter of the year because first quarter has Wrestle Kingdom, so that one's set. There are big shows in the second quarter of the year. That's where you kind of get sometimes Sakura Genesis slips over into there, and you get Dontaku. You also get a little bit of Super Juniors. Third quarter has G1. So that one's pretty good. And the fourth quarter, you're kind of in that little weird holding pattern thing for a while where you get like the tag tournament and all that.
See if you can stick a couple shows in there to goose some extra money.
And on the Stardom end, similarly, the 5-star Grand Prix is in the third quarter, like G1 is, and then things kind of quiet down a little bit until they get to their big show, although their big show is in December. Anyway, business, it's just rough. So the yen being down and business down year over year in Q4 from 14 0.9%. And then from July to September, from July to December, so backing up the 6-month run, revenue down 4% year over year. So, and overall business for Bushiroad was rough. This is a rough earnings call. It wasn't very pleasant for anyone involved in there. So Bushiroad as a whole down, the wrestling part of it down, but wrestling is 13%. So there's still 87% of the Bushiroad business that comes from games, toys, and licensing and all those kind of things. So either way,
there could be better news, and we hope for better days ahead.
There could also be more belt tightening.
Yes.
There just could. I mean, again,
that will be.
Yeah. And so if we're talking about who are they going to bring in? Are they going to get this new exciting guy? Yeah. And that just goes back to my point of like, push the friggin' young guys you got. Just do it. I mean, they're already there. You're already paying them. You don't have to pay a whole bunch of money to a guy that's doing cocaine and smoking weed and then coming to Japan where the drug laws are much harsher here. What are you thinking? And then, and Nemeth, Nick Nemeth had a good match. I like Nick Nemeth. He is a talented dude, but again, he's over 40. He hasn't been in the mix in WWE for a long time. He beats the guy that
prove something to himself and to the world that doesn't necessarily align with the goals of New Japan. Yeah. And New Japan's goals need to be about making New Japan as strong as possible. That's my fundamental problem with the global title booking of Nemeth right now, is that it does nothing towards stabilizing the infrastructure of building up the undercard of the talent that needs to become main event talent.
There you go. And let's see, did we get all the questions? I just want to see.
I did forget a match that I did the last scan, and we have Taiji Ishimori versus Jacoby Wuggs. If you have Honor Club, you have the honor of watching that match tonight on Ring of Honor, airing probably in about 20 minutes.
Okay, there you go. So Dunson says it doesn't feel must see. Yeah, I think that's a fair point. Now, we have the anniversary show coming up, so we'll be back in a week, and we're not wrapping up right yet. There's one thing I want to do before we go. But, of course, this is the March 6th is Wednesday. That's going to be the anniversary show. March 7th, Thursday morning, will be night 2 of the New Japan Cup. Some matches back there at Corkin Hall, and we will cover all of those and preview the myriad of shows that are coming up the week after. The business is about to pick up as far as the schedule goes in New Japan. We're going to be a lot busier watching wrestling instead of just talking about it. But we also have that anniversary show again. I mentioned Ota Ward Gymnasium is the 52nd anniversary. I decided to look back, Jeremy, at history and take a look at the very first one. It's on the nose. Like the anniversary show isn't just anniversary-ish. It's March 6th. That was March 6th, 1972 was the very first New Japan show. It was in Ota Ward Gymnasium. So would you like to hear a little bit more about that very first show?
I absolutely would, Steven.
All right. So what we had that day, again, Antonio Inoki had been one of the bigger stars for the JWA, Japanese Wrestling Association, and he got fired because they got word that he was thinking of striking out on his own. There were a lot of issues with management in JWA. Remember, the other big star from JWA was Giant Baba, who also left and told him to kiss off and formed All Japan, also in 1972. So JWA was having a lot of trouble with its top stars. But apparently Inoki maybe wasn't as discreet as Baba was and got fired before he could leave. But this was going to happen anyway. He didn't form New Japan because he was fired. He got fired because he was going to form New Japan. They built up the first show. He had a couple of guys from the JWA, some other people, but it goes to show how reliant Japanese wrestling was on the native Japanese versus foreigner motif. That whole thing. And the very first card drew 5,000 people to the Ota Ward Gym. So it shows you that he was a star and he was a big deal, and people were anticipating this. They did not start from the bottom. They started with a 5,000 seat. Well, it's not a 5,000 seat building; it's larger than that. But they put 5,000 people in it for the very first show, March 6th, 1972. The very first match in New Japan history was El Furioso defeating Tatsumi Fujinami in 4 minutes and 20 seconds. So Tatsumi Fujinami had already wrestled a little bit for JWA, but he went with Inoki. And that turned out to be a good move because, of course, he became one of the all-time legends of Japanese wrestling. This was very early in his career, essentially a young lion. El Furioso was Tony Romano, who was a wrestler who worked all over. I mean, Mid-Atlantic, Georgia, Tennessee, Florida, like one of those guys from the United States. He came over as El Furioso. Second match was Ivan Kamarov beating Osamu Kito. And Osamu Kito was the guy that just passed away not all that long ago. We talked about him here on the show. Was one of the main trainers in New Japan. Shinsuke Nakamura, Ryusuke Taguchi, heavily trained by Kito and a lot of others, but those are two guys in particular. And Kamarov is a journeyman too from the United States. Shoji Kai defeated the Brooklyn Kid. Now that was Mike Conrad, a guy who worked mostly for the Worldwide Wrestling Federation, the WWF in the Northeast. So again, almost every match on the show, in fact, I'm looking at it. Yes. Every match on the show was a Japanese versus a foreigner on the very first show. Inca Peruano and Katsuhisa Shibata ended without a winner in a double countout, 17 minutes and 10 seconds. And yes, that is Katsuyori Shibata's father. So Katsuhisa Shibata was on the very first show there. And Inca Peruano was Victor Tamayo, also Tamayo Soto. He wrestled in Georgia, Tennessee, Mid-Atlantic, all that. So that's who they were booking with. Their alliance with the WWF hadn't solidified yet. Inoki knew those guys. And of course, like I mentioned, Mike Conrad had worked for them, but he was booking guys that had worked all over the South, mostly at this point. It was the late 70s when they really started working heavily with Vince McMahon Sr. and booking guys like, Bob Backlund coming over and Pedro Morales and things like that, the real WWF star, and Andre the Giant. They didn't have that at the first show yet. After that, it was Katetsu Yamamoto and Tayono Bori. Tayono Bori, one of the big stars from the JWA also. They defeated the Durango brothers, John Durango and Jim Durango, by disqualification in one match. It was a 2-1 best of 3. Now, John Durango was a guy named Daryl Cochran who had worked all over, a journeyman, but Jim Durango was Bullet Bob Armstrong. Hey. So one of the all-time legends of Georgia wrestling and Southeast wrestling down in Alabama and Mississippi, Bullet Bob. And of course, Road Dogg's father, Brad Armstrong's father, the whole Armstrong clan right there. He was the patriarch of that. So John Durango on the very first New Japan show, and Jim Durango, Bullet Bob Armstrong. And the other one, let's see, in the end, the last match, and this is something that we wouldn't see a lot of over the years, but Antonio Inoki lost a singles match in the main event of the first New Japan show to Karl Gotch. So Gotch was a big name, probably drew most of that house with Inoki. Inoki was a huge star. Karl Gotch was one of the legends of Japan already in 1972. So that was a big get for Antonio Inoki to bring Karl Gotch in, and he did put Gotch over there. So that was just a little sign of respect for Gotch.
Did you take a Gotch-style pile driver?
I don't know. I've never seen film of that. I'm not sure there's film of the very first show, but that would be an interesting thing. But that is where that came from, by the way. Yeah. And Inoki ended up getting his first win in New Japan over Armstrong, Jim Durango, in Takasaki, Gunma, at the City Gym a few days later at the second show. And after that, they began touring around. They went to a lot of towns you hear about today. Ehime was in there, Ibaraki, Kanagawa, Saitama. These are all places we'll be seeing throughout the year in New Japan. So they were touring. And Inoki, after that original singles match, mostly put himself in tag matches in the main event. 2 out of 3 falls, and his team was almost always the winner at that point. You can put himself over there. Gotch only worked a couple of matches on that tour just to kind of get them started. But that group that I just read off was basically the troupe for the first 14 shows. That was the opening series is what the tour was called, the opening series. And that was mostly the troupe. They just kind of rotated the opponents around for the most part. And mostly Inoki in a tag match on top against 2 foreigners, and with Inoki winning in the end. And the tour wrapped up on April 6th, and back in Saitama again for Inoki and Shibata as the team over Inca Peruano and John Durango. And what you basically had was them rotating around the heels versus the heel foreigners, the gaijin against the native Japanese. So it was very much all about the native Japanese wrestlers fending off the foreign heels. And when Japanese did wrestle other Japanese, it was usually very early on the card, and it was a very scientific match. Handshakes, no rule breaking. If it went to a draw, handshakes afterwards and bows and that type of thing. Very respectful, as to be the contrast for the more crass and perhaps a little bit of a subtle heel cheating Americans and other. It wasn't only Americans. There were, I think, some of these guys were portrayed as being Mexican from around the world. The competition from all over the world. But the Japanese always portrayed as the sportsman-like baby faces, and the foreigners a little less so. So that's how New Japan began. That was their very first tour, the opening series, 1972. Some familiar names, like I said, Shibata, Kido, Inoki, Toyonobori, and some familiar names that were going under different names. So Bob Armstrong and such. So Carl Gotch, of course, and still a legend in Japan.
I never seem to realize just how intertwined the history of New Japan is to the rest of pro wrestling. The minute they hit the ground running, they began to have connections everywhere, and it became very, very important.
Yeah,
I was thinking at some point during the show, we had already gone past the cup, but part of the booking, I'm kind of wondering if Evil beats Shingo, and then we get Evil and Zack Sabre Jr. at some point. But Evil and Zack Sabre Jr. for the never openweight title would be way more interesting than Shingo versus Evil for the never openweight title. And I know that they're trying to get Zack Sabre Jr. to that next level. So if that happens, it's not entirely out of the question. Anyone watching right now and commenting on YouTube, before we go, we got a couple more minutes. Do you all have your picks for who's going to win the New Japan Cup?
Yeah, who do you think is going to win the thing? I'd like to know that too. And while we're waiting for that to come in, Jeremy, Ole Anderson passed away this past week.
Yes.
One of the all-time legends, of course, in the Carolinas and in Georgia, and someone who read Dave Meltzer's biography, listen to the Wrestling Observer Radio to hear how Ole weaved through some of the most important times and places in pro wrestling history. If you want to talk about late 70s, early 80s, when everything changed from the territories to the national expansion of the WWF and WCW, Ole found his way in, around, within, and a huge part of all of that. Remember, we don't get Black Saturday when the WWF shockingly took over the TBS time slot without Ole Anderson being such a dick to the Briscoes that they sold the company out from under. So there's all kinds of history there to go into. Ole Anderson did not have a tie to New Japan. He did wrestle in Japan a tiny bit, but he mostly stayed in the United States. But it was for IWE, the International Wrestling Enterprise, which was the third company that came up kind of out. Well, it was around before the JWA went bust, but after the JWA, everybody split. Baba went and formed All Japan, and Inoki to New Japan. The IWE was around. There were three big companies. There were more than that, but those were the three big ones, and that's who he worked for. So not a New Japan guy, but he did run into some people that would, Mighty Inoue, Animal Hamaguchi, Strong Kobayashi, who would, of course, be a big part of New Japan in the future. So Mighty Inoue ended up going to All Japan, so did Rusha Kimura. So, that type of thing. And it was mostly Gene and Ole Anderson that went over for a tour. But it's worth mentioning because, like you said, New Japan is intertwined with the history of wrestling. Everybody influences everybody. And so, the Andersons, it was worth mentioning Ole Anderson passing away this past week. Just an influential guy overall in pro wrestling, particularly in the Carolinas and Georgia.
Yeah, definitely worth mentioning. And the impact that he had on wrestling are felt to this day. Both good and bad.
For better and for worse. Yeah.
Both good and bad. But but Cody Rhodes, like you could trace him all the way back.
He's right. He's right. I mean, you can make the case that Dusty isn't quite Dusty without Ole, and there are other heels that Dusty came up against, of course, all the guys in Florida when he first turned babyface and things. But Ole was a big part of Dusty's history and what made him a legend out there. You got to have the darkness so that the light shines brighter. And Ole Ole was the darkness in that. And keep in mind, he was a man of contradictions in that he was at times a great booker who didn't think Ricky Steamboat was a main event talent, and who bragged about firing Hulk Hogan, which I'm not sure you brag about, considering he's one of the biggest draws in history. But Ole, like I said, they also said one of the big grumps in history. Ole hates Santa Claus and ice cream. I've heard a few times.
Cantankerous.
Curmudgeonly, I think, is what Brian and Dave were talking about.
Oh yeah, I was yelling cantankerous over and over and over again. I'm gonna have a conversation with that guy about really you had to define curmudgeonly on air. Let's find this pair. Let's find that hair and let's split it.
All right. I don't know if we're going to get any more predictions in the comments there. So maybe
I had about 15 people privately message me and tell me that I'm a genius.
Oh, the TJP?
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's a bunch of people in my DMs right now just telling me what a great, what brilliance I have in my booking mind is unparalleled. So we'll just go with that. They all think I'm right.
We'll know next time we're here. We'll know next episode.
I'm gonna eat I'm gonna be sipping a giant glass of iced tea or eating a giant bag of heads.
All right. Well, if that's not a good way to end this one, I don't know what is. Stay tuned, folks. So don't forget about the Dynamite Show. Don't forget about Power Bombshells on Sunday. Don't forget about the 5-Star Joshi Show. Thanks, Scott Edwards, for joining us. 5-Star Joshi Show. This is the time to listen to that one, by the way. This time of transition in Japanese women's pro wrestling. Venken is here. Oh, good. Jeremy picking a TJP beats Finlay moment. Okay, there you go. He likes it. So thanks to everybody who joined in, but make sure you check out those programs. We're in the run up to WrestleMania. Listen to the rap. There's a lot of great stuff on the Fight Game Media Network.
The GG show. There's
yes.
Yeah, and if you want to join the Discord where you can have more conversations with like-minded people, email gg@fightgamemedia.com. He will send you a personalized invite to join the Discord. It is the only way to join the Discord. It is a closed Discord, but if you listen to our shows, that is the magic entrance to it and such. Steven, thank you for another episode of Speaking of Strong Style. You are a fantastic co-captain along.
Oh, thanks, man. I enjoyed it, and as always. So we will be back right here again next Thursday to talk about the first 2 nights of the tour, look ahead at everything else. We'll have a little information as to where this thing might be going. So is Jeremy a fool or a genius? We'll know in 7 short days.
How come I can't be both?
Maybe you are. With that in mind, thanks once again for listening and watching. He's Jeremy Finestone. I'm Steven Conway. Thanks for joining us for Speaking of Strong Style, and we'll talk to you again real soon.